Okay, so this is going to be an interesting one. It is titled United Nations Were Created to Destroy African Continent. Quite a contrast there for it to be called United Nations. I don't know what they're going to say in the video, but I'm curious to hear them, so let's get to it.
Nations, a lot of people think about human rights. What I think about is the United Nations was created in San Francisco in 1945. If you think about how the world looked like in 1945, it was largely colonized, if not all. It was a small selective group of countries who created the UN, and it expanded over time, but it was never created to include the African countries or certain countries of the global south. That was not their intention. It was not their intention for the human rights treaties to include us people.
Okay, we're gonna have to skip this just a little bit so we get to the video.
So I do want to set the record straight on one thing. We've heard a few times the sentence, we gained our independence, we were given independence, but actually that's not true. We were always independent. We were independent nations, we were independent people, and we regained our independence. And I think that's a crucial difference because something was taken away from us and we took back what was always ours. So I urge everyone to not talk from the perspective of, oh, we got our independence in 1965 or they gave us our independence. No, they actively came to our countries, took our independence away. They enslaved us, they colonized us, and we took it back. Regarding the topic of neocolonialism, I have a bit of an issue with the neo. Neo is Latin for new. There's, for me, nothing new about it. It's true what Mug said in the beginning. Slavery and colonialism go hand in hand. And yes, it's true, it was an economic structure to enrich oneself, but there's nothing neo about it. What happened 200-300 years ago is still happening today, right? If we think about the United Nations, a lot of people think about human rights. What I think about is the United Nations was created in San Francisco in 1945. If you think about how the world looked like in 1945, it was largely colonized, if not all. It was a small selective group of countries who created the UN, and it expanded over time, but it was never created to include the African countries or certain countries of the global south. That was not their intention. It was not their intention for the human rights treaties to include us people, right? So there is nothing neo about it. Same goes for institutions like the World Bank, IMF, even the European Union. And like you already said,
So basically what she's saying is everything that was created, the United Nations, IMF, where it seems like they be doing activities that favor Africa, like providing aids, these were created to actually destroy Africa. I'm trying to get her points right, so I'm trying to emphasize some things. If you think that's what she's saying and if you agree with that, feel free to let me know. But I think that's where she's headed.
They like our resources, but they don't like our people. And I think the war in Ukraine is a very good example of that, because what we saw is that when you're white, you get everything. When you're black, you don't get anything. I've been to those places.
You know what is interesting? I'm sorry for stopping the video, but what is interesting here is a lot of Africans share the same, thoughts she has right now. And there was a time where somebody representing Ukraine was like, we want Africa to support Ukraine openly. And Africans were like, when we wanted the support openly, nobody came through for us. So we'll stay neutral. Yeah, so this is a real thought Africans share.
Travel to Ukraine, to the bordering countries, to help people of African descent. And what you saw is that all of a sudden, we didn't need conferences. We didn't need so many debates. We could adopt laws within a week, not even, to grant people asylum, money, housing, schooling, you name it. But when it came to people of African descent, we took the humanity out of them. We called them third country nationals. Third country nationals. You're not a number. You're not a person. You're not someone who's traumatized, who fled away from something, right? You are a third country
National.
national. You're not number one. You are not number two. You are not number three. And that is still going on today.
And maybe to specify for so that everyone can follow the third country national you're referring to now are specifically people from the African continent who were in the Ukraine, and then the selection happening over there with people fleeing towards.
Yes and no. My
Yes and no? Yeah,
my
please explain.
personal
Yeah.
my personal work is only focusing on people of African descent, nothing more, nothing less. That's a deliberate choice that we made as an organization that I proudly stand for. The entire concept of third country nationals is, I would say, in a social sense, if you have a skin color that's not white. What we saw is that third country nationals also entail people from India, indeed African people. When the war in Ukraine started, what we saw, especially in the university areas which are more towards the Russian border, is that they would queue people up based on their skin color. So if you were, let's say, someone from Morocco and very light skinned, you would place at front of the line. And if you're black, you would place at the end of the line. And that would determine the way how you would be evacuated, if at all. And at a certain point, they were like, we don't want those people over here. We don't want them. So let's call them not first-class citizens, not second-class citizens. Let's call them third country nationals. First country nationals generally means like you're from the country. Like I have a Dutch passport, so I'm officially a Dutch citizen. Second country national means that you have a passport from a European Union country, so you're a citizen of the European Union. Third country national generally means everything and anything outside of that, but in practice, it is something completely different. It's just a racist concept that takes the humanity out of them. The first one is colonial taxes. Today, there are 14 African countries who are required to pay with the French franc, which is absurd because in France, they pay with the euro. And without signing this agreement, they couldn't regain their independence. And then there is a second one, which is not only related to France, but also to Spain, to Portugal. The Netherlands had some part in it. And it's some kind of investment agreement. And it basically entails that, let's say you're in a given African country and you delve gold. And you think, oh, I want to sell that gold in the market to have some money.
Yeah.
The country that colonized you, so let's say this happens in Madagascar, the Madagascar company who delves the gold needs to mandatory talk to the Portuguese government, who is not on the continent, and offer them the gold and say, look, we've delved 100 kilos of gold and we want to sell it. If Portugal says we want to buy it, they buy it. They determine the rate. If Portugal at that point says, we don't want to buy it, but at the same time, we don't allow you to bring it to the market for others to buy it, they're not allowed to sell it.
So this is still ongoing. The question here would be, why are African countries, African leaders still upholding this, I'll call them flood contracts? That would be the question here. Because if you know, Africans recognize that this is not favorable for Africans. I think we all share that, right? So if we do agree on that, then why do we still keep this? Why do we still adhere to this? I'm just asking, I might not be educated in this aspect, so feel free to talk to me. If you understand, if you have the answers, please educate me.
So I think those two also need to be mentioned because they're contributing heavily.
No, I think this is only three factors. So, if there's students here or people like, we need to map all the different mechanics. And it sounds like Jan Pietersen Koen is still alive, like trying to monopolize a market. It sounds just like what they were fighting for at the time. Like, we decide who you sell to and why. So thank you for sharing and adding that this is a far from complete picture as well.
Of Bolivia, changing the constitution from a republic where the Catholic Church had absolute power to a country where the very few...
I think in order not to keep the video too long, we should end it right there. If you want to see the full video, the continuity, if you want us to react to it, feel free to let me know in the comment section. In other words, I always... the Did I say in other words? On the other hand, I always put the link to the full video in the description in case you want to go check the owner out or the channel. Please feel free to do so as well. But I think that was good information, very good information she had shared. Something we Africans need to watch and learn and, you know, put in action. Because all these things is like, we know what is wrong. We can theoretically state all the ins and outs of what might be going wrong in Africa and all of our problems. But then do we really fix it? Has anything changed since we knew about all these things years ago? Can we measure the progress? You know, we should, you know, talk about that as well. So as African, watch this and put into action and try to see how you can, you know, fix it, including myself too. I'm African. That being said, is the end of this video. Share your thoughts in the comment section, smash the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.